Your neighbor tells you about the unstable man in the cul-de-sac who claims to have been abducted by aliens. And then there's the woman in town who claims to see Bigfoot all the time. Your boss, who you greatly admire, confides in you that he has started speaking with his wife daily when he gets home from work. She died 8 years ago. It's hard to believe this stuff, and you write these stories off as overactive imaginations. Are these people seeking attention, or are they a bit unstable? No matter what you think, if you're like me, you walk away wondering, what if that was true? The What If It's True podcast features stories by ordinary people like you and me. Something has happened to them, something so strange they are in agony unless they tell others. My name is Cameron Buckner, and the What If It's True podcast is available at whatifitstruepodcast.com and on all available podcast apps.
Welcome to Beast TV. What was that? You better get a fresh dip and buckle up. Larry Porst II, what a show we have tonight.
Yes, we do. And I got internet where I can do a show.
That's a good thing. We want to welcome everybody that's in the chat room. We already have 100 people in the chat, and we know that y'all are just chomping at the bit to ask questions. And if you noticed, our intro was a little different. Our friend Cam Butner we've decided to swap commercials. And so we're playing Cam's commercial, and it's a great podcast. And I would encourage you all to listen to it. Tonight, we're going to have Shelly send us the questions because we don't want Coonbo to have to shorten his answers, or we don't want to miss questions. So we will do it that way. And we're sure that we're going to get a lot of questions. So Larry and I will go through the questions, and if they're similar questions, then we'll just try to combine them. And if y'all know me, y'all know I'm not much on social media and such.
You ain't.
But Shelly Reed has put together for us an Instagram account to where if you're on Instagram, then you can keep up with us on there. So just go to your Instagram account and type in Sawdust Beast, and you should be able to find us. Larry, what a show we got tonight.
We do, definitely.
And we also have a special guest other than Tim.
And Tim.
Coonbo.
Well, thank you.
And so let's just go ahead and get this party started and introduce Coonbo for us.
Well, you just did.
Well, you do it. Your turn to talk.
Well, our guest tonight joins us again this week. From last week, we pre-recorded the show. Everybody knows him and loves his stories, and he come back to answer some questions tonight. And our guest tonight is Tim Coonbo Baker.
How you doing, Coonbo?
Howdy. Doing good. Doing good.
We are thrilled to have you back. And
Glad to be here.
there was over 4,000 views from last week's show, over 150 questions. And I will tell you, you must have the magic touch, because your podcast is the only one in probably 6 months that we have not gotten thumbs down. And and I think it's me and Larry getting the thumbs down, but I think that you were so good last week and that they were either on vacation or
they gave up,
or they gave up. And
well, they might have run out of rocks throwing them at y'all and didn't have enough left for me.
could be.
Yeah, or the tomatoes weren't ripe enough for them to be rotten yet.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
Kubo, we had a lot of comments about the Shofar, and you have asked to bring on Mark to talk about the Shofar, which originally introduced this idea to you. And so,
Correct.
So if you would, why don't you introduce Cryptidville Mark for us?
I'll do that. Well, I've known this gentleman for at least 20 years. We met at LBL for the first time. We've researched in LBL together, and Mark is he's my kind of researcher. He digs into stuff. He was the one that at least 9-10 years ago introduced me to the idea of the connection of Bigfoot to Nephilim. And he sent me down a whole nother line of research, like I said, a good decade ago that I had never even dreamed of until I heard this from Mark. And so I owe a tremendous amount to Mark Maycheck. And he and I have worked together on this, the idea of Shofar, using the Shofar, and many other things, which we are still working on. And so I want to introduce my very good friend and fellow researcher, Mark Maycheck.
How you doing, Mark?
Hey, how's everybody?
Doing good.
Can y'all hear me fine?
We can. We can. And we appreciate you coming on to enlighten us on the Shofar. And just to get it started, what was the light bulb that went off in your head that sent you down this path of wanting to know more about the Shofar and how it could correlate with Bigfoot?
Well, first off, I just want to thank you guys for having me on, giving me an opportunity to talk more about this subject. It is a subject that a lot of people are skeptical on, but I do believe that it's something that people should be aware of. To answer your question, basically, back around 2013, there were folks that were talking about the concept that Bigfoot was a Nephilim, or that it was descended from the Nephilim. And I apologize for the ums, but I'm going to try to cut that out. So anyhow, there were people talking about this subject, and I really didn't believe that was the case. However, I took that question and I looked at it and I said, well, what if there is a possible connection? So I started looking at the whole theory that these creatures could be descended or from the Nephilim. And from that, I wanted to incorporate the scientific method as much as possible and be able to formulate a way to test that theory. And in that, I began to study and came across, a lot of different things that referenced using the shofar to call these creatures, or to call angelic creatures. And the bottom line is, if these things, and I'm not saying they are, but if they are descended from the Nephilim, they would be part angelic. Granted, as time has gone on, their bloodline has probably been diluted. And I think that's evident by when you look at the scripture. It talks about the Nephilim, and then they had another lineage that they called the Raphaim. And at some point in there, the Nephilim began to not only interbreed with women, earthly women, but they also interbred with what were referred to as the beasts of the field. And I think there was a certain number that were taken and were used in this. And that further diluted the bloodline and came out with this bloodline that was referred to as the Raphaim. Now, I'm going to tell you guys up front, I'm not an expert on all this stuff, and there are probably things that I'm going to miss. I'm a working man, and I have, limited time that I can devote to studying all this, but what time I do have to studying it, I do try to learn as much as possible. But I guess in saying that, I guess I'm trying to say that I'm not saying that I'm right with any of this, but the possibility exists that I could be right on some of it. And I think that it definitely warrants examination. So in studying all of that, I came across many references where the shofar was used to call upon the angelic host and the angelic armies. And I said, well, if these things are part angel, then they should respond to it. Being that at the minimum, they would have some kind of epigenetic trace in their DNA that would compel them to respond to it. And that's when I came up with the idea of using the shofar to try to call these things in. And once I came up with that idea, I presented it to Coonbo, and I was like, hey, is this, this is my thought. Is this something you might be willing to try to, test in the field? And part of the reason why I brought it to him was because I knew that he was traveling around to different locations, and I didn't want to, if it did work, I didn't want him to put himself into a bad situation, trying to call these things near where he lived, just based off of the premise of what they are, if they are in fact descended from the Nephilim. So that's kind of what put me on the road to, looking at the shofar as a possible tool to try to get these creatures to respond.
And we see Coonbo has his shofar handy to them. Would you like to hold that up for us, Coonbo?
All right, let me back off just a little bit here. You can get it off. This is it.
Blow
It's
it up there, Mark.
It's a 2 full curl kudu horn from a kudu, which is a very large type of antelope that lives in Africa. And there are some certain details about this that's been done to this kudu horn to make it suitable for use as a horn. I'm not going to share all those details right now, but anyway, it's proven to be at least somewhat effective. I have had success with it in the field if I can get the thing to blow correctly, and it's extremely difficult to blow. It took me a good year of practicing to where I could ever get some kind of noise out of it that would do any good. But it's been hollowed out all the way through. It's got sort of a, not much, it doesn't have a mouthpiece. I found out that if you put a mouthpiece on it, it messes it up. But it's, you don't want to turn it into a trumpet. It's not a trumpet. It's not a bugle. It's got its own, there are certain characteristics to this horn that causes it to have its own apparently unique sound or call. Now I've never been in a band. I've never played a trumpet or anything. I used to blow a bugle in Boy Scouts. I've still got a Boy Scout bugle. And I have taken that bugle out in the field and blown it. And I can blow it much more proficiently than I can that shofar. And I basically get no results out of the bugle. The shofar, if I can get the right notes out of it, I've gotten results. And that's about all I have to say about it right now. but anyway, Mark can add more to that if he cares to.
So as far as I know, one of the questions that was asked was, why would these creatures be compelled to respond to the shofar? And as I mentioned, if these things, meaning Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, if these things are descended from them, being the Nephilim, then there's several different things that could be causing them to respond. One would be, as I mentioned, calling the angelic host. But I think the important thing to remember with that is basically if these things are descended from the Nephilim, as we're told in the Bible, were basically an abomination. They weren't intended to exist under God, the way God created everything on earth. They weren't part of the plan. So you have to remember that even though they weren't intended to exist, being that they have that angelic DNA, if they are in fact descended from the Nephilim, I just want to reiterate that as much as possible, because I'm not saying that they are, because I don't have one on a table that I can, examine and, do a bunch of genetic tests on and find out, I mean, where would we even get a baseline for that? So,
right.
Anyhow, the big thing with that is it's important to know, one, that if they are descended from them, that you could be, that you are in fact calling up something that has not good potential. And I think Tim mentioned in the previous show that you don't know what you're going to get when you call one, and that's just a fact that goes along with it. You know, there are a lot of people that speculate that, you know, they're just like us and they have good and bad days. I tend to look at that a little bit different. I think there are other factors that might come into play with that, aside from, you know, just having a good or a bad day. And we'll save that for another show. But you just don't know the level of risk that you're undertaking when you use one of these shofars to call one of these creatures. Hope that made sense. And if anybody, you know, has questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them. As far as the frequency, I'm not real sure on that. Do you have any idea about that, Tim?
Well, I do know this from, you know, blowing my bugle and blowing bullhorns and stuff, you know, that I've had back from when I was a kid even, and you know, using them to call the dogs when we're out coon hunting. This shofar does not have a what I would call a pure sound. It's well, you've heard it, Larry. It's sort of a rough. I think the technical term for it is a dissonant sound. It's like almost like a blend of a few frequencies or something, and it's a part of the characteristic of this type of horn. It doesn't produce a really pure sound in the octaves that you've got to get into to, you know, for the thing to work. One thing about it, I've found out, it hurts people's ears that are standing close to me when I blow the thing. It's even though it doesn't sound all that loud, it's painful to the ears. Now, me, hell, I'm half deaf anyway. I mean, my hearing's pretty poor. In the upper frequencies, I hear low frequencies very good, but it doesn't hurt my ears. But like I said, anybody standing beside me, or certainly if they're in front of me any at all, it hurts their ears when I blow it. And to me, the volume doesn't sound very loud at all, but it certainly carries. It amazes me sometimes, you know, when I've been calling with my mouth doing my calls, and I hear sort of the acoustic response of the woods or wherever I happen to be, and then I blow that shofar, how much more the shofar echoes and how much more it carries. You know, it surprises me in that manner.
I think that's a good answer, and that's something that I haven't thought about. I mean, that's something that we could actually record and put it on the spectrogram and actually look at the frequencies and the main line of it and the echo lines of it. Spencer Jameson has a good question. And before we get to this question, I've seen some things pop up in the chat room about blowing it tonight. And I'm going to tell you, if Coonbo blows that thing in the house, Miss Coonbo's going to come in there with an iron skillet and pop him over the
got that
head
right.
because he has made the promise that he will not blow this thing on the property. So we're not going to be blowing the shofar tonight. But
Nope.
Spencer Jameson asks, has anything happened to indicate they are responding to it like beings being summoned, as opposed to maybe they just dislike the frequency?
I think that they are compelled because of the distances that some of them have come. We've triangulated, especially out in Oklahoma where it's more open and where we could get better vectors, and and we were able to figure out where these things were coming from and where we first heard them. These things are coming from, we called them up from over 2 miles away. In fact, one place in Oklahoma, we determined they were coming from about 2.5, coming from 2 different directions from about 2.5 to 3 miles away. And they were coming hard and fast. And the way they act when they get to us tells me that they're not coming just because they dislike the frequency, because we've seen what happens when they do dislike the frequency. Like if we're out there playing, Led Zeppelin or Def Leppard or Van Halen or something like that to them, when they come up close, they let you know that they do not like that even one little tiny bit. These things come hard charging in, and when they get to where they can lay eyeballs on you, they just, so far up to this point, they just stop and they just stand there and looking at us. And we've had as many as 3 or 4 different groups come in on us at a time. And what's funny is that the different groups don't interact with each other. And it's almost like that wherever we are with this thing, it's like it's neutral territory. They don't start fighting and squabbling amongst each other, which is really weird, because obviously we're going to areas that have where things like this happen, where you have 3 or 4 groups come in. You're in an area where the population is high, and there are a lot of territorial markers, but they're obviously crossing somebody's. At least some of them are crossing some other troops' territory to get there where we are.
Right.
And there's not a big fight that breaks out. So I think that Mark is correct that if you can blow it correctly, that they are compelled to come. It's in their genes. They have to respond. Now, what we don't know is why. What do they expect when they get there? Are they expecting some revelation from God? That hey, go find all the Alabama fans and kill them. Or throw them in the river or whatever.
So said the Auburn guy.
Just kidding. I shouldn't have said kill. I should have said that. But we don't know what they're expecting, or if they are expecting anything. It may be that just is like, hey, somebody, it's like what would they, back in the old days, back during the Cold Wars, where they were talking about these people would be brainwashed ahead of time, and they would hear some kind of a broadcast or a signal or something, and then they were programmed to go do something.
Yeah.
And we don't know if that's what's happening. Is it that they are, there's a programming in them, and they have to respond, and they come there and they're like, well, what am I doing here? What are all those other guys doing here? We don't know what's going on with them. That's the part that makes this tricky. Go ahead, Mark.
I came across something earlier that might provide some light on that subject. If these things are, in fact, descended from the Nephilim, basically you have mentionings of using a shofar 72 times in the Bible. And one of the most significant mentionings is the shofar is blown to signal the final judgment. And one thing that I learned from somebody that I'm no longer in contact with many years ago was that, and they used to say this all the time, you can't think about these things like they're a person. You have to try to look at things from their perspective if possible. So think about it. If you're an abomination, a condemned being on this planet, and you know that there's going to come a time when there's going to be final judgment, wouldn't you welcome that? I mean that's a hard question, but I mean seriously, would you want to be on this planet, as a condemned being? I guess what I'm saying is maybe they're coming in and they're expecting to see something relating to that final judgment, and they're not. And when they don't see what they're expecting, they just go on about their business. And I mean, it's a thought, and it's something that I came across recently that kind of could be a possibility as to why they're responding the way that they are.
Okay, go ahead, Coonbo.
That question there, do non-booger cryptids respond to the shofar? Based on some results we had back in April, there's a chance that possibly Dogman may respond to it. Possibly. However, they definitely sounded off, but they didn't come to us. They moved away. So I don't know.
Should I mention anything about the
so I don't know how to. Yes, we have compared shofars. We've had them side by side in the field. We've had goat horn shofars, and there goes Duke, and there goes Joe. Hey, Joe. We've had goat horn shofars, and we've had ram's horn shofars, and my kudu horn shofar in the field side by side, and have blown both. And we didn't get any noticeable response out of the ram's horn shofar. That's all I can say about it that I have personally observed. But we have tested them in the field side by side. So,
I didn't mean to step on you there, Tim. I apologize.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just asking if maybe I should so people understand just how effective this using a shofar is. The fabric of I was asking you if I should talk about the event that I experienced at the fire tower.
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah,
Well,
that's something that happens.
Well, the call the call of the shofar, it can affect the very fabric of space and time, and I experienced that firsthand when we were at a location, and it really freaked me out because it was like, imagine a scene from one of the Matrix movies. You know, it's like I saw an actual shift in everything that I was seeing, and this was not just something isolated to me. It was observed by another individual. So you know, that's this took place after the shofar was blown. So it does affect things other than people and cryptids and you know, what you might think that it would.
Mm-hmm. I can say that in spite of what people may think, what Mark has said has some validity. I experienced a very weird happening after I had been practicing with the thing, and finally got where I could hit some of the correct notes. And immediately afterwards, I don't really want to talk much about it, but I had a really, really strange thing happen. And it didn't happen to me, it happened around me. And that's all I can say about that. That last question that popped up, could you put that back up, Mark? I forgot what he said.
Let me see. I might have lost it.
You did.
What was it? I was going to answer it.
He was asking about
no, that's not it.
The government using a specific frequency to against cryptids, Bigfoot, to disable them.
I believe that was from Duke, from World Bigfoot Radio, and he said that Wes Germer released some data on frequencies that the government used to bring in the Bigfoot. I don't know if these were nuisance Bigfoot that they were trying to move out of an area or what, but it would be real interesting to know what those frequencies might be, that you might be able to mimic them with some type of instrument or instrumentation.
Well, that's definitely true. I mean, I've been calling them with my mouth, since I was a boy. And if you hit the right note, I mean, if you do the right call at the right time, they're going to come. Sometimes all they do is answer you, so you know where they are. And sometimes you put them in the road, they hear you and haul butt. But yeah, I believe I'm sure there are frequencies that you can play, and you'll have a higher probability than not of them coming to you. Now, those frequencies that the government may use, I have no idea Do they come in ready to whoop somebody's butt? Or do they just come in like to the Shofar? They come in till they can put eyeballs on you, and if you've got a thermal imager, you can see them out there. So I don't know. I've never been involved in any kind of a kill team, and I don't want to be. So I really can't answer that other than the fact that, yes, they do respond to frequencies.
Now, Jamie Genter asked an interesting question, and I don't think that we would know this answer now unless we were able to measure it on the spectrogram. But I like this thinking out of the box that Hoosier has done with this question.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you hit a frequency that is same as infrasound. I've never thought of that with the Shofar.
Well, I have. That's one of the. And let me back up to some a news article that many of you may remember. One of the things that's proven about infrasound is that you can cause people to get sick from it, and it can cause all kind of effects: nausea, paranoia, sick to your stomach, diarrhea, anaphylactic shock. I mean, the list goes on and on. In fact, you can completely disable someone with infrasound, and that it causes apparitions, visual apparitions. That's happened to me personally. In fact, different animals use it to stun their prey. It's been proven that tigers use it to stun their prey right before they attack them. Now, if you remember in the news here a couple of years ago, it was found that in Cuba, that the Cubans were bombarding our embassy with sonic frequencies that were causing not only permanent hearing loss, but they was causing cognitive disorders and sleep disorders and stuff like that. And what they found out was that they were using dissonant ultrasound frequencies above 20,000 hertz, above the threshold of human hearing. But they were using dissonant frequencies. In other words, they would set up a drone frequency, and then they would set up another frequency that was close to it, and they would vary it up and down over that drone frequency. And they would vary not only the energy level of it, which is the decibels or the apparent loudness of it. They would vary the frequency of it as well as the amplitude of it, and you can use those dissonant ultrasound frequencies to mimic the same effects as infrasound, and that is how they are making sonic weapons that are effective that they can aim at specific human targets. Infrasound, they found out that through lots and lots of research, that you cannot use that as an effective weapon against your enemies, because infrasound, think of your subwoofer for your stereo. That ultra low frequency goes everywhere. So much so to the point that you usually cannot even tell exactly where the emitter is, where the subwoofer is. Whereas ultrasound, you can aim it. Think of the tweeter in your stereo, which you can actually aim towards sweet spots in a room. So they, in the efforts to create sonic weaponry, they moved away from infrasound and went to this dissonant ultrasound frequencies, and they could, like I said, they'd set up a drone frequency, and they would vary a second frequency along with it. But as they are varying that frequency, they are changing the frequencies within the frequency range of infrasound, and producing an infrasound-like result. And I'm sorry I'm not able to explain it any better, but anyway, that's what the Cubans were doing to our embassy staff. Now, an interesting thing in my research on the shofars, I found out after talking with a very, very astute and very wise and intelligent his fellow that's been studying Jewish history and old scripture for decades. He said that the way the walls of Jericho were brought down was using these dissonant frequencies, and that's why you had the angels, the heavenly host, were blowing kudu horn shofars like this, and that the Israelites were blowing ram's horn shofars, and that the two of them working together produced these dissonant frequencies. And one of the things I forgot to say about these dissonant frequencies, they can actually break down solid materials. I have personally seen them in lab tests shred metal and completely crystallize wrenches and tools and such as that. In fact, if you look back over my other shoulder, excuse me, I can't. If you look back over there, you see my red Craftsman tool chest. I saw a big roll around Craftsman tool chest that was left in a government acoustic chamber for one 90-second test. And it had a very, very high content of ultrasound dissonant frequencies, and it literally shredded that toolbox into silver dollar size pieces of metal, and all of the tools and stuff that were in it, all the sockets and the wrenches and the ratchets and all that stuff, they were laying there on the floor of the test cell afterwards, and you could pick them up and you could tap it against the wall of the cell or tap two of them together and they would just fall apart. The metal was crystallized, like just like glass breaks up in a car window or something, or just like breaking up tempered glass. It was unbelievable. So don't think that these dissonant frequencies don't have a lot of power. If you can pulverize steel with it, imagine what over a period of days and days and days that it can do to rock, which has an even more frangible crystalline structure than steel. So that is how the guy, this biblical scholar that I was dealing with, who was also highly educated in other areas, he said that's how they brought down the walls of Jericho, with using dissonant frequencies from ram's horn and kudu horn shofars.
Wow.
Yeah. Everybody can crucify me or burn me at the stake, but I'm just telling you what I'm saying and what I have personally observed. With people that don't know me, I was a test engineer for the government for 14 years. I was a senior test engineer. I did a lot of research, development, testing, and evaluation on everything from pieces and parts to nuclear plants to submarines, ships. I worked for years on the space shuttle and I worked for the Army Missile Command on a lot of different programs they had going. So been around a lot of testing.
For those of you that do not know Coonbo the way that Mark and Larry and myself do, Coonbo is very meticulous with his research, and he does not he will dive into a subject and try to pull up any kind of sources that he can to help form a hypothesis. And I think that that's what I see when I'm in the field with Coonbo, is his education, using that education in his research for Bigfoot. And it's not just something that you think of off the cuff. It's something that you have put many hours into studying it and trying to know what would be the correct route to take with a new project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
We're getting we're getting a lot of questions that are coming up besides the Mopar, the Shofar.
Well, I like those Mopars too. Like the last motor I built was a 446. No kidding.
But so I would like to give Cryptidville Mark this opportunity to leave us with any final thoughts that you would like to leave us with, Mark. It doesn't have to be on the Shofar. It don't have to be on the Mopar. It can be on anything that can help any of us out here looking to improve our game in finding this creature.
Well, first off, I just want to take a second to apologize to Duke for butchering up his question. When I read it, it kind of came out wrong. Not perfect human. It just kind of came out wrong. Not intentionally. I wasn't trying to sabotage his question in any way. And with that, I just want to mention to the folks out there that are active researchers, looking at maybe getting into doing research. If you can step up and be the man or woman that you are and admit when you're wrong and try to be honest with people, that'll probably carry you a lot further than the other path. And with that, the only other thing that I want to mention is to those would-be individuals that think that they want to go utilize a Shofar to try to call one of these creatures up, my best advice to you is not to do that. And the reason why is because there are a lot of unknowns that go along with this whole concept, and you could be very well taking your life in your own hands in doing that. And I know that there are going to be some people out there that are going to say, "Oh, well, what do you know?" I'm not a spring chicken. I'm not green. I've been doing this for a long time, but even though with that, I don't claim to know everything, and I'm not trying to instill fear in anybody about being afraid of the unknown. But with the studying that I've done, I would say that calling these creatures in using that method is probably not a good idea. And that's pretty much it. Aside from, thank you guys for having me on and giving me a chance to speak on this subject. Of course, if anybody's got any questions after the show, feel free to reach out to me, or leave me a comment directly in the comments, and I'll try to check that and respond to you. And that's pretty much all I have, Mark.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on, Mark. And I think it was a great idea that Coonbo had, because two heads are better than one. And y'all have both researched this and put a lot of time and effort. And I think that's good advice, what you said. Things that you do in the field, you better be prepared for a bad reaction, and prepare yourself and know what you're going to do if it goes bad quickly, and do your research before you try something. I really, that's something that I have witnessed Coonbo doing in the field, that he's just not shooting off his cuff, but he has put a lot of thought and time into it before he tries something new in the field. But we really want to thank you for coming on tonight, Mark, and I'm sure if y'all would be interested in hearing some of Cryptidville's stories and his research and the things that he has done, put it in the comment section, and we'll pass that off to Debbie Jones. And but thanks again so much for coming on, Mark.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I thank you also, Mark.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah. And like Mark alluded to, like he said, and anybody that's been around me very much has heard me say this many times, that any researcher that's worth his salt, that is really serious about this, or any type of research, you've got to be willing to admit when you're wrong. You've got to be willing to keep an open mind and go back and re-examine the evidence, re-examine your data, and admit that you're wrong. Admit when you don't know something. I mean, I don't know is a good answer.
Yeah.
I'd rather say I don't know than try to make up some kind of BS. And then, I've had to go back and change my mind about a number of things over the years, concerning Bigfoot, because there's really no expert. We don't have any of us lay people. I mean, the government may have some that, hell, they might shave them and put them in a suit and have offices in the Pentagon. Who knows?
Take them to town on Saturday night.
Exactly. Who knows? But as far as us peons out in the field, all we can do is just speculate. We make our best judgment and our best guess or theory or whatever according to what we see. And one thing that always helps is try to look at it from the Booger's point of view, from the Bigfoot's point of view. What have they got to gain by it? And how would it do them some good? So,
well, I know one thing I picked up on your stories about them coming in for the Shofar compared to your calls is they seem to come in with reckless abandonment to the Shofar. And whenever you call them in with your calls, they're a little more stealthy and try to sneak in on you. to see what you are.
Right.
And the Shofar, they just barrel in on you pretty much.
Yeah, they barrel in till they can put eyeballs on us.
Yeah.
And then they stop. Whereas I've had a bunch of them that I've called, with my regular calls, where, like you said, they come piling in, and when they get where they see you, then that's when they really get after you. And I've stopped them a number of times by putting a spotlight right in their face, and I've also, when some have piled out on us in the daytime, they know what a weapon is, and I've actually had to point weapons at them to stop them, and knock on wood, so far that stopped them. I may go out on a booger trip sometime and not come back, to go out and they find me scattered all over a 40-acre field. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just hope if they ever do it to me, that they do it to me quickly.
That's better than butt up. It's better than butt up. It's better than being found in a field with your butt up there.
Yeah. With your britches pulled down.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. We got a lot of good questions coming in. We only have about an hour left, but so put your questions in all caps, and Shelly is going to send us to them, and me and Larry will take turns asking them. If we see similar type questions, then we may just combine them. But Super Saiyan Bebo asks, yeah, Mr. Coonbo, have you heard stories of Dogman and Bigfoot in Taylor, Mississippi? They say they are dangerous and they will kill and eat people down there in Taylor, Mississippi.
Well, I'm pretty familiar with Taylor, Mississippi. My family's was from New Albany, Mississippi. That's where my my grandfather and Granddaddy Baker was from. It was New Albany, just right up the road northeast of Taylor, and we used to go down there and fish in I can't remember if it's Sardis Lake that's near there. We'd go through Taylor on the way, and all I have to say, that's some boogery country down there. And I don't know about them killing and eating people. I haven't heard any of that, but I know they're down there, and I know there are dogman sightings down in that area. But I also know that all over northwest Alabama and northeast Mississippi and area there are more disappearances than what you would ever imagine. When I got to studying and working with some of the local law enforcement and studying disappearances in this area here in northwest Alabama, northeast Mississippi, I was amazed. I had heard about a few sort of high profile cases, but I had no idea about the numbers of them that I had never heard of. I don't, like I said, I don't know about them killing and eating people down around Taylor, but I know that there are boogers in that area. It's a very boogery area, and I've been hearing dogman reports out of that area for years. That's what I can say about that.
All right, Mark, are you still there?
I'm still here. Go ahead and ask your question, Larry.
I don't know it.
Are you not on the PM from Shelley?
I
quit. Finally. Mike McSwain asked, Coonbo, just like to know what you have heard about the bunkers near the Beast of LBL site.
Okay. Those were built back in the early 1950s, and they were used for National Guard training, and I have been to them back while they were still there. They were set up for training National Guard troops back during the Korean War era. And they were torn out. They were destroyed and torn out a number of years ago. And you can't even get, well, you can still walk into the area if you knew where they were. Now, that being said, those were built as pillboxes, I guess you'd say. There was a group of like about 6 or 7 of these concrete pillboxes that were out there in the boonies in a sort of a cleared area there to the in the north part of LBL. Like I said, I've been there. I saw them before they were demolished. Now that they're gone. Those were not due to any kind of dogman activity or anything like that. That being said, there are in different places around LBL, there are remains of old basements and slabs and stuff like that. Parts of old houses still there. I've seen several of them. They're in the area of what some people call Hotel California or the Vampire Hotel or stuff like that. There's got various and sundry names. There's an old pump house that looks like it might have been, some people say it looks like it might have been a bunker or something. There's I'm sure there's some old septic tanks and stuff out there. They're probably, the dirt's eroded away from them and part of them are sticking up out of the ground. I don't know. But I actually camped on top of remains of an old slab or a basement. There was a basement underneath there, and there had been a house there. That's over in the western part of LBL, and it's still there. But as far as bunkers that were built specifically for trying to shoot dogmen from them, no, there weren't any that I know of, and I think Mr. Maycheck would back me up on that. So that's what I know.
All right. Well, Max Powers, we had him on a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke of his interactions with Bigfoot as a child, and he wants to hear some of your stories of interaction as a child.
I think I might have told about this on the last show, but first one I ever saw, I was 4 years old, and I heard gravel, somebody walking on the gravel that was around our house. We didn't have gutters on our house out at the farm, and so my dad had spread gravel around the exterior of the house so that the water running off the roof would hit the gravel, and it wouldn't splash red mud up on the side of the house. And so this is before we had air conditioning, and I was laying there in bed and heard we had an attic fan going in the house, and I was up on the top bunk, and we had those old timey crank out casement windows that were fairly high up in the wall, and I was laying up on the top bunk right by that window and had it open, and it was pulling the night air in, and it was a lot cooler that way, with that air coming in over you. And I heard something outside crunching the gravel, walking around under the eave of the house. And I foolishly, as a child would, I wouldn't, you don't think logically as a child all the time. And I thought it might have been one of my friends coming over wanting to play or something. So I got up and I unclipped the screen, raised it up, and I leaned out. And, I looked down first, and then I looked to the right, and nothing. I looked to the left, and there was a booger standing there against the wall of the house. He had his back just flat up against the wall, and he had his head turned looking at me, and I'm like, holy crap! And the moon was glinting in his eyes, and the it was also glinting on its fur or hair, and it's not fur, it's hair. And I know now that it had red hair, but as a 4-year-old, I saw those yellow eyes. That moon was reflecting yellow in its eyes, and I saw that moonlight reflecting on its hair, and it looked to me like it was, that it was blood in his hair. And I came flying off the bed and, ran to my parents' room and yelling, Mom, Daddy, there's a yellow-eyed, bloody-headed monster outside my window. And like I said, I think last show, my dad never hesitated. He jumped out of bed and right into his slippers and grabbed a shotgun out from behind the door and a flashlight off the bedside table and yelled at my mama to get the kids and get in the bathroom with them. And so she grabbed me and my little sister, who was, she wasn't an infant, but I don't know if she was toddling yet. She might have been, probably was. And he took off outside, shotgun in one hand, flashlight in the other hand, and his house slippers and boxer shorts. And Mama grabbed us, ran to the bathroom with us, and got her pistol, and she was sitting there on the floor with her, had us backed up in the corner behind her, sitting down, and she was sitting there with her arms resting on her knees, pointed at the bathroom door. And there wasn't any window in that bathroom, and so it was a safe, secure place. And I had the bathroom door locked. About 10 minutes later, Dad comes back and he's, Dot, it's me. Don't shoot. And she came in and anyway, she opened up the bathroom door and did you see him or did you see it? And he says, no, but I heard it beating feet, towards, headed out to the northeast up there towards where they used to keep an old shack, old construction trailer sitting. And anyway, and then we had issues with them, for years, and it terrorized my 2 little brothers worse than it terrorized me as we were growing up. And I had them scared to, the things are always looking in their windows and stuff, and in their bedroom windows, and you'd get up to go to the bathroom, and the dadgum things would come up, and it would look in the bathroom window at you, and making noises and stuff out there. And it was it's spooky growing up where we grew up. And they were along that river, along the Tennessee River, still are to this day. But I never saw another one clearly until I was a young adult. And I saw one, very, very, very clearly when I was about 20, 23, 24 years old. So I went from 4 years old to 23 years old without seeing one up close. But, we had various encounters with them and stuff. I knew they were out there. I learned about a little bit of them from my dad and from my grandparents. And my Granddaddy Baker talked openly about them. And he actually took me back. Tree is still there, about out northeast of the old home place. He took me out and showed me this big oak tree. Sits up on a sort of a ridge out in one of our fields, and took me out there and never called me by my name. He just called me boy, and he just pointed at that tree and he says, "Boy, you see that tree right there?" "Yes, sir." He said, "Those catamounts sit up in that tree and watch us." He said, "Every time I come back here, they jump down out of that tree and run off down that holler down there." He said, "I don't want to hear about you coming back here and playing around and climbing in that tree." And it was a big old oak tree. And if anybody knows what a tree looks like that grows in a wide open its whole life, it's got limbs that come all the way down close to the ground. Perfect climbing tree. But at the age I was in, I hadn't even thought about climbing trees. And he added, and if I ever hear about you bringing your little sister back here and playing around this tree, I'll tear your ear end up. I'm thinking, later on, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, later on, as years passed, I thought, man, it never even crossed my mind. I never had the slightest inkling of bringing my little sister back here, But he died not long after that, so I guess he was trying to impress on me to, I didn't need to be messing around back there in their territory. I need to be careful around those things. But we had different various and sundry things happen. And
now, our friend Scott Espinosa, better known as Can Squatch, asked, have you ever laid eyes on a man dog?
No, have not. I've heard them. I've seen very fresh evidence of them, but that I know of, I've never seen one. I've seen things, big and tall, moving through the woods that I never got a full body view of it. I just got glimpses of it, but I never saw anything that I thought that, hey, that's not a booger. That's not a Bigfoot. That looks like a dog man. I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen the snout. I've never seen the ears or anything. I've seen a couple of fantastic pictures of them though.
Yeah.
But I've seen very fresh tracks, and I've heard them. But I hadn't laid eyes on one yet. Don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Admiratoria double alt. Can you discuss the cover-up of the Bigfoot that was run over in the national park in Ohio? And if you don't know anything about it, you can't discuss it.
Nope. I don't know anything about it, but I do know that one was run over on the Natchez Trace a number of years ago. And I personally know 2 law enforcement officers that don't know each other that related the story to me independently, totally independently of each other. There was one run over and killed on the Natchez Trace up in Tennessee, not too far from Collinwood, Tennessee, a number of years ago. And some men in black, the best way you can describe them, and a navy blue plain van with no markings on it other than the head government tags showed up, and they had the local law enforcement and the park rangers block off the roads a mile or so either north and south of where the accident happened, and block off some nearby entrance and exit ramps off of the trace. And this van came in and then left heading north up the trace, and the booger was gone. And there were, when the people that hit the thing stopped, there were other Bigfoot in the trees on the side of the trace throwing stuff at them and screaming and carrying on at them. Now, don't know anything about anything happening in Ohio. That doesn't mean anything because I don't really have the time to follow a tremendous amount of stuff. I stay pretty busy with my own research and with the folks that I deal with on a halfway regular basis.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. I can inquire. I mean, I know a lot of good folks up in that area. I can inquire, see what I can find out. But.
Okay. Winford T. McGillicuddy asks, Coonbo, have you ever researched Shoals Creek / Little Butler Creek in Lauderdale County, Alabama? And he says, I have a friend who vanished walking And I have been stalked along the side of the road down there.
I have researched that area, and I will say that there was an incident that where a person was attacked in that area right there within sight of the creek, and was actually physically assaulted. And I think the only reason that person is still alive today because he had a bunch of buddies with him. And there was a bunch of screaming and yelling and hollering that ensued when that happened. And there are definitely, for where I'm sitting right now, I'm about 10 miles from there. There's definitely a lot of activity in that area. Yes. But I'm not aware of anybody disappearing, but that, I have gotten out of touch. I've just moved back in this area back in November, and I have not made any contacts with local law enforcement in this area here. So I haven't heard about the disappearance, but I do know that there are a surprising number of disappearances around Northwest Alabama over the last several years.
Huh. Well,
yeah.
Guess where we're going camping, Mark?
And I can tell you that back when I was a boy, when I was a teenager, we were up in the upper reaches of the Shoals Creek, up where the water is just canoe depth, and we managed to make a little run up to one of the more liberal beer joints on the state line, and we were enjoying some liquid refreshment, and something came in on us and scared the bejeebers out of us, and we opened up as you people heard me say, an extra large, super fast acting can of Gone, and we left the area so fast that I think we left one of our coolers behind. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I know we got the heck out of Dodge, but yeah, there's a lot of activity along Shoals Creek, and even more activity along the Elk River, which is about 3 miles east of me. So, in fact, my brother-in-law saw a dog man on right there on the Elk River, along the Elk River several years ago. Yeah, he had a full body sighting. Nope. And I have an old work buddy that they have a place on the Elk River, and they've seen them several times out there. Not dogmen, but Bigfoot out there wading around in Elk River, fishing. They hand fish. They just grab them there, and they also dredge up mussels and stuff off the bottom.
Yeah. There
is a place there on Shoals Creek that I know about, that I've noted since I was a boy, that there is always been an unusually large volume of mussel shells up there on the bank. And now I know that mussels are one of their favorite food.
So, I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. Lindsay Meadows asked, does Coonbo still help people with habituation issues?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. So tell them to contact you, and if y'all have a email or something, tell them to email you, and you can pass it along to me, and I'll their contact information, and if they're having problems, I'll help them solve them.
All right.
Fantastic. Okay. let's see. Tammy Moore asked, do your dogs go out on outings with you like Bo did? And she says they are beautiful. I love my German Shepherds.
I love those German Shepherds too. I used to take out, over the years, I've taken out, I had a female Malamute that I've taken out. Her name was Niffy, and of course, Bo used to go everywhere with me. And after Bo, then I used to take Zara, one of my little female shepherds, out, and she was a good Booger dog. And then Griff was my big male shepherd that I had after Bo passed away. He was a good Booger dog, and he was braver than Bo, and he wouldn't abandon me. He would let me know where it was, and he would look right at it, and he would, he'd start sort of leaning against me and trying to push me where he wanted me to go. And we have one now named Duke, the big brown one. He does the same thing. He'll stay with you, but he'll be trying to herd you towards in the right direction away. And Jake, the one that y'all probably have heard barking on the last show, he's the more vocal one. I've had him out on a couple of Booger expeditions, and Jake's like Bo. He don't want anything to do with them. When he sees them or realizes they're there, he turns around and he's gone. He wants to go. He wants to leave right now. And he's clued me in on a couple though. But right now I don't have none of the three do I take out with me on a regular basis. I'm going to start working with Joe, the younger one of the three, and see if he's got it in him to be one. He's a pretty quiet dog. He's pretty aware of what's going on around him. He's like old Bo. If he sees a squirrel, he'll follow it from tree to tree to tree. And he picks up on cats and armadillos and raccoons and stuff. So, I've lost about 40, 50 pounds since that video was made.
Yeah, that's actually a video from when we were out, I don't know, 5 years ago or yeah.
About 4 years ago. Yeah. I was chubbed up pretty bad then.
I like to think of it as just healthy.
Yeah.
That's what us fat people do, Larry.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Matt Smith asks, do you know about the Bigfoot at the Lake of the Pines in Texas?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he does.
I know he does. Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit?
Well, there's regular Bigfoot down there. There's also the type 3s, the snouted ones, the ones that I think are that they're primate, or they're like just like they're hominids, like we are, and like regular Bigfoot are, the type 1s and type 2s, but they've got that baboon looking snout on them, and big toofies, big teeth, and big canines, and there are quite a few of those down in that area. But I've only been on Lake of the Pines once, and I back years and years ago, the group that I used to run with, they had a big outing down there, and I didn't get to go. And but I've been down there in that area several times by myself or with smaller groups. But there are definitely buggers around Lake of the Pines, absolutely positively. And in fact, just about all those lakes in that area have boogers in them. And there's, and like I said, right in that area, you've got a fair amount of those type 3 Bigfoot. They have the plantigrade feet, but they a lot of times leave clawed tracks, even though their heel hits the ground when they walk, just like a regular Bigfoot. A lot of times the tracks you find will have clawed toes on them. But
I know there's some big bass in Lake of the Pines too.
Yeah, I wanted to go down there and fish. Yeah,
I've been lucky enough to go with William Lunsford twice, and it was
really
good. Yeah, excellent.
All right. Yeah, and I know one thing about those buggers down there, they know how to throw. They can throw a cantaloupe-sized rock over 100 yards, or at least about 100 yards anyway. Yeah, they can throw. Yeah, they love to throw stuff.
All right, Can Squatch asks, have you seen a Bigfoot doing the spider crawl?
Yes, and that is creepy. That is, yeah, that sort of gives me the heebie-jeebies. In fact, I don't know if you can see it, but I got chili bumps on me. Yeah. Matter of fact, the first time I saw it really good, I'd gotten glimpses of it before, but the first time I saw it really good was I had Jake with me, and we were down down in South Mississippi, and I was taking him out just to walk him. We weren't really looking for buggers, and I mean, that was the purpose of the trip, but I was taking him out to walk him before we got loaded up in the truck and headed out, and we're walking up a dadgum road there, and just a sand 2-track road going through the woods, and all of a sudden he just he whirled around and started wanting to head back to the camper and carrying on a bunch of stuff, and I heard something just really faint right in front of me, and there was a little bit enough of a moon to see to walk him. I clicked on my headlamp, and there was one laying right there off the side of the road, not 6 feet off this little 2-track, and about 6 feet off the side of the road, and about 7 or 8 feet in front of me, and it was laying in a slight depression on the ground, and it's like it levitated up off the ground about 3 or 4 inches, and it was doing his fingers sort of like, I mean, it was weird. It was like up on its fingertips, and it backed away from me, and then it started turning, but as it turned, it's looking back at me, and it started going away on its belly, and there was little humps and woods, and it was like it was just going over it smoothly, almost like watching a damn centipede or something, or like you said, a spider crawl. It was just creepy as all get out. And then we saw one do that up there at LBL, and Troy Allen and myself and another guy, we lit one up we were down at a campground that nobody was at, and we were in there, and we kept hearing something, and easing up there close to us, and we said, well, there's one over there, and we could pick him up on. One of the guys had I don't know, this might have been before we had thermals. This might have been when we were still just using Gen 2 Plus night vision. We could tell something was over there. And so there was one of the guys with us that had never seen one, and we told him, they said, all right, you get behind me and look right down my arm, and when I click this light on, you might get a glimpse of him before he hits the ground. we clicked the light on that son of a gun, was standing up. He just, boom, just flat to the ground and goes taking off like that on his belly. And there was a log out there. I mean, I'm talking about a big log. I'm talking about something. Let me get over here. That big around, laying on the ground. And that son of a gun came to that log and it just went just right up over it. Just as smooth. And once it went over that log, it just disappeared. Don't know where it went. And that was really creepy looking. And what's crazy is they'll maintain a direction going out through the woods. That's what happened that first one that I saw. And as it was going along, it would turn around. You know, they can't turn their head all the way back. So the sucker would turn sideways, but still be going in the same direction. You know, it's going like this, and it turns sideways so it can see me, but it's still going the same direction it was going before. And it, look, turn sideways and look over here at me, and then straighten back out, going straight away from me. It did that 2 or 3 times. It's just going out there through the pines. And that is weird looking. And I mean, it's going at a pretty good clip. I mean, I would have had a hard time. I would have been having to go at a jog to keep up with it through the woods. And I'm not sure I could have kept up with it. But, I mean, I wouldn't have been in a run, but I'd have definitely been at a jog.
Yeah.
So, and I've gotten glimpses of them doing that. I've seen them another place down in Mississippi do that. And, actually covered a pretty good piece of ground on its belly like that, doing that spider crawl or whatever you want to call it. But it looks almost like something out of a cartoon. It's weird.
Kane Michael witnessed that, and he was having a lot of activity going on that particular night, and it was really spooking him. And he called me on the phone, and we were talking while he's actually saw one doing the spider crawl. Yeah. And he said it almost looked like a lizard moving really fast. And,
right. The arms, the legs moves so fast you can't even hardly, it's hard to follow it. And it doesn't look like that they move them a whole lot. And I think a lot of the action, the propulsion comes from their fingers and toes, and not just. I mean, it's a lot different than a low crawl that you do in the Army. It's you're not moving your arms and legs that much. It's strange, which tells me how strong their hands and their feet are. Yeah, and how much dexterity they have with their toes.
And that's the way Kane actually explained it to me. It looked like it was using more of its fingers and toes to do this crawling.
Absolutely. That is correct. Yep. Yes, sir. That's exactly what it looked like to me. Yeah. Larry,
we are just about out of time. Why don't you ask a question and pick out a question, and I'll pick out a question. And we'll ask 2 more questions.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Do you want to go first or second?
You go ahead and go first.
Oh, gee. Now I got to read through them while there's awkward silence.
Okay. I'll just ask this one. It was one of the last ones asked. BF Bud asked, where do you think they live? Build on structures, caves, underground? I kind of have my theory on that, but I would like to hear Coonbo's on that.
Well, I can tell you that we have found old houses and old barns and stuff where they lay up in those on a regular basis. They certainly use them to get in and out of the weather. We've actually found places where they almost had a nest look like Big Bird's nest that you see on Sesame Street. I I know for a fact that they dig dens up under creek banks and stuff and up under ditch banks. I've actually been in one. Dan Rickey was the first person that I know of that made me aware of them. I had heard country folk, folks that lived out in the country, their whole lives, talk about them being up under ditch banks and up under creek banks and stuff. But Dan was the first one that found one and wanted me to come explore it with him. And it's me and my boy there. That was just in that video there. Yeah. But anyway, we went in it. We went in one, and with him covering me with a Winchester Model 70 458 Winchester Magnum, an elephant gun, literally. And let me tell you, I was sucked up tight going in that thing. There were vines hanging over the front of it. It was very well camouflaged. But to be in it and see their handprint, their finger marks, and in there where they had dug that thing was just amazing. Absolutely amazing. It's one of the biggest thrills of my 40 plus years of Bigfoot researching was to be in that thing and realize that was actually made by Bigfoot. But I have found also their nests out in the woods where they bend a bunch of saplings over, enough of them, from different directions that it creates sort of a like a leafy roof over it. And I have found those in a number of places. In fact, I found one here just last week. Matter of fact, we myself and Jimmy Osmer and we were out researching, and Greg Howes and his buddy Alan were with us, and before, but Jimmy and I were pre-scouting, and we found a structure like that, a den structure. I know that they live in caves. I've actually seen one in a cave myself personally, and I know they come and go out of a cave that we have on our farm. My dad got talked into letting the government come in and build a fence around the entrance to that cave, supposedly to protect the endangered, either the gray bat or the little brown bat. I don't remember which, but the cave is a maternity cave for those. And they got done with the thing one day and closed the gate on it, and they didn't have a regular lock. They just dropped a bolt or something through it. My dad came back the next morning with a lock, and something had come up out of that cave and had reached down and grabbed a hold of the bottom of the chain link and jerked it up off. This was an 8-foot tall fence with and they had grabbed it from the bottom and pulled it up off the ground, and you could have ridden through the hole that they put in that fence on a riding mower. That's how big of a hole it was. And so my dad called him up, and he said, "Well, y'all are going to have to come back and relick your calf. That fence didn't even last 24 hours. I mean, the fence literally lasted one night, or didn't even last one night, because they got done with it one afternoon, and Dad was back over there bright and early the next morning. It was torn up. So obviously they trapped something in the cave that didn't appreciate it and wanted out.
Yeah.
So they came back and they put a new fence in, and they buried it a couple of feet in the ground. They dug a trench all the way around, buried the bottom of the chain link about 1.5 feet or so in concrete, and then up on top they reinforced it and put in kickers with 4 strands of barbed wire. Came back a day or two later, and the fence was yanked down from the top, and just squashed down. So back at that, in those days, I weighed over 300 pounds, and myself and another gentleman that weighed around just about that much, we went back there and we jumped up and grabbed a hold. Believe it or not, we could jump still. We jumped up and grabbed a hold of the top pipe of that fence, the two of us in the same span. And with over 600 pounds hanging on it, us yanking and pulling as hard as we couldn't budge it. And something had come up there and just pulled that thing down, just crushed it down like this, like it was nothing, like you dropped a 3-foot diameter oak tree on it or something. And so I know they live in caves. They come and go out of that one on our big cave on our farm to this day. And I have personally seen them in a cave up in, we came up on one. We were in there surveying a cave, and I used to be a member of the National Speleological Society. And we were surveying a cave and saw one in there. It was a rather exciting moment. So, and there's been I've heard quite a number of reports of them in caves. So, yeah. So I think they live in they're opportunists. They live in the best shelter that they can find.
Right.
We are really just about out of time. Have you got a question?
One question, and I'll make it quick.
All right, Deborah Irvin, what's the scariest encounter you've had, and have you seen any cryptids besides Bigfoot?
I guess about one of the scariest encounters that I had is when we had in the daylight, we had 3 burst out on us when we finally figured out how to get into the area that we now call AP Road.
Mm-hmm.
AP stands for, at the risk of being crude, AP stands for Asshole Pucker Road. And I'm sorry for the bad language, but you can bleep me out or whatever. Or I'm sorry to the parents that may have kids that hear that. But anyway, but that's the way it got its name. Is we went in there and it was broad daylight, and myself and a guy named Sammy Armstrong, we turned the truck around. Fortunately, got pointed out, and we'd been yelled at as we were coming down the road, and we ran out of road. The road just petered out into a field, and the field was muddy, so we had to back the truck up a whole bunch of times, and it finally got turned around, and it had gotten quiet, and we decided to get out. And so we got out. Sammy says, we better take our shotguns, or one of us said, we better take our shotguns. The other one agreed. So we took our shotguns with us, and about the time we got out and closed the truck doors and walked around to the front of the truck, they started screaming, and here they came through the brush like runaway D5 cats, caterpillar dozers, but a whole lot faster. And they burst out of the brush right in front of us, probably 25, maybe 30, no more than 35 feet away, and screaming and raising Cain. And we, like I said, daylight, so we didn't have any flashlights or flashes to pop in their face to stop them. And we just threw our guns up, pointed at them, and I mean, they were pump shotguns. We each chambered around and threw the things up and pointed at them and had our fingers on the triggers and the safeties off. And it was obvious they knew what weapons were. They slammed on the brakes and stood there and screamed at us a few times, and eventually turned away, mumbling and grumbling, and walked back into the brush. And Sam and I are sitting there, it was just about a Brown Shorts moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we finally eased back into the truck, and I fired that dude up, and I reached in there, I flipped that bully dog chip up on the performance, up on position number 4. I flying past those dudes, giving that old F-250 Super Duty everything it'd do. I was going so top when I got up to the top of the hill, and the road teed into a paved road. And I had to slam on the brakes. I was going so fast, I'd have probably gotten airborne and ended up nose first in the ditch on the other side. They were chasing us. And like I said, I stomped on the brakes right before I got to the top of the hill and managed to turn the corner and onto the paved road, and the boogers burst out of the brush right there next to us. And I didn't start pulling away from those dudes till I got up doing over 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They were running right beside us, raising holy Cain. And, that was a pretty exciting moment.
I see one question, and I have to ask this. Maybe you could answer it in 30 seconds. But our friend Shane Carpenter, that did Into the 400. Now, this is something that I have been personally doing research on. And he asked, have you seen their thumbs? If so,
Yes.
describe the placement and orientation compared to ours.
Okay. They're sort of in between ours and what you see with a gorilla or one of the great apes. They're not, their hands aren't as elongated and their thumb is not as far back as a gorilla, but they're further back than ours. And they have a longer web in here than we do. But the thumb is obviously, in the great apes, the thumb is not as proportionally large as ours is. Theirs is as proportionally large as ours, but it's a little bit further back. Their hand is proportionally a little bit longer than ours. And it's also wider. I mean, I guess maybe the whole thing is bigger, but the thumb appeared to me to be a little bit further back. And I can also tell you when they're walking away from you or as they're walking, whereas we tend to swing our hands like this, their palms are back. They're more like this. Their hands are more flat when they're walking. And that's one of the things that I've noticed. But their thumbs aren't much further back proportionally than ours, but they're not near like a gorilla or a chimp. And they are proportionally as big and strong as ours are. You know, it's obvious that they use them a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, I'd hate to get in a squeeze contest with them or play slaps with them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Coonbo, we really appreciate you coming on tonight, and we would like to give you this opportunity to say any final thoughts that you would like to leave with our audience.
Oh heck, I meant to. I was going to drag a chapter out of my book and read it to y'all, and I got busy and forgot to do it. I guess, like I said, one of the things that I tell people that research with me is, like, you got to keep an open mind, and you know, you may have, it may be just obvious to you, you know, what something is, but if you have an open mind, it may take you years to figure out, you know, what really happened in an incident, you know, or what you really saw. And like I said, I had to go all the way back to my very first sighting report that I ever took back in like 1978 or 79. That, thinking about it decades later, I figured out it was a dogman report, not a Bigfoot report. And I went back almost 20 years later and hunted up the people. I was able to find one of the people that had given me that report and questioned him. And he was like, Well, yeah, I tried to tell you. But I couldn't understand. I didn't know Dogman existed in the 1970s. So I had no frame of reference. Even though he gave me a good description of a Dogman, I just couldn't. I couldn't. I figured he just didn't see it good. And and I got pretty much the same description from 4 people that had seen it in 2 different locations, but in close proximity of each other. And I had to, figure out that I was wrong. But always be willing to relook at your data and think about things from different angles as you learn more. I know that I used to didn't believe anything about any of this cloaking and crap like that. And now that I've gotten deeper and deeper into this, researching the Nephilim and the angelic background and such, and talking with other researchers that I very, very highly respect, like Bill White, otherwise known as Tal Branco, who has told me about things that he has personally witnessed where they've just faded out or walked right into through brush and stuff, and don't even disturb the brush. And it jived with what I have seen a couple of times with my own eyes, and I couldn't figure it out at the time. And I just thought, well, I just didn't get a good view of it or something. But after hearing his description and other folks, respected researchers' descriptions, I realized that these things do some stuff that we can't explain, that that humans don't. At least I don't know how to have the capability of doing some of the things they do.
Yeah.
And there are certainly no experts out there. Anybody that claims that they're an expert's full of it.
I agree with that, and that's great advice.
Hey, Lee, I got one thing I want to add.
Okay.
There is a faction of researchers out there that say that if you're not out there casting all the tracks that you find, if you ain't got a bunch of 15 or 20 casts that you've made, sitting around your house, and you're not a researcher. Well, that's BS. That is complete BS.
Yeah.
You know how many casts I've made in my life? Take a guess.
0.
There you go. You know how many I've got sitting around my house here right now?
0.
0. Big old goose egg. I'm more interested in seeing the booger that makes the tracks.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds of tracks I've seen, but I've never felt compelled that I needed to make casts of them. I study them. I take pictures of them, and I'll admit there are things that you can get out of a cast that you can't pull out of a photograph. But I've laid down on the ground and looked at them from all different angles, and I've satisfied in my mind what's going on. And I've looked at casts that other people have made. But me personally, I just haven't taken the time and spent the energy to do the casting. And I don't throw rocks at people that don't cast tracks.
Well, I agree. We usually don't carry casting material, but those trackways that Shelley Reed found at a campground that you camped with us at a couple of times, we just had to go out and get it. But for me personally, the thing is, if I find a track out in the field that tells me I've done my homework and have put myself in a spot to where they are traveling through. And so that's what's important to me, to know that I've done my homework, that I have actually seen a track. Yeah. Larry, do you have any final words before we have to go off?
Well, I appreciate Coonbo coming on here again and answering the questions. I know
certainly
from what you said, you've got 40 years of experience researching these things. and you go back and forth of what it is and what you're doing. And I appreciate that, because until we get a body and know what they are and can know what their favorite food is and their favorite hairstyle and all that, you got
the ones out on our farm. The ones out on our farm, they got a beauty shop somewhere, because every one of them I've ever seen looks like they just came out of the beauty shop. They're all clean and their hair is shiny.
Yeah.
They're not like them old nasty Oklahoma boogers.
But we appreciate your experience and your honesty about what you found through the years.
We do, and we appreciate Cryptidville for coming on at the beginning at the podcast and giving us his, I'm going to say, expertise on the Shofar, because of all the research that he has done.
He was years ahead of anybody else. Years ahead of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's real. He's very, very, very humble. But I'm telling you what, he was years ahead of anybody in that angle of research. He turned me on to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's great stuff, and this has been a fantastic show. And we've got an outro that we're going to play, and if you're able to hang on backstage for a minute, we'll play this outro. And we want to thank everybody for coming in and asking your questions. If your question didn't get asked, we apologize. You could put it in the comment section, and we can see if we can get those questions answered. So we will see you again. Same bat time, same bat channel. Night, footers.
We'll see ya. Been fun.
Beast TV would like to welcome all of our new Facebook members. Be sure to check out our pictures and videos of possible evidence. And if you haven't checked out the Files tab, there is a wealth of information that you may find beneficial. If you would like to support Beast TV, check out our gear. We have coffee mugs, face masks, gaiters, shirts, and tank tops. The link is pinned at the top of the comment section. Everything is always marked down 20%. So come check out our junk.
This has been a Sawdust production.